Well, I'm going to get us started on today's events, and in doing so, I'm going to introduce two formidable women to you, who we will have the pleasure of hearing from for the next 60 minutes or so, hearing about their experiences, hearing about their knowledge. So I'm excited for everyone who is participating this morning to be amongst these women and to learn from them and to hear from them. So without further ado, I'm going to formally introduce you to our panelists this morning. So today I'm joined with Ruth Riddick and Paulette Walker. I'll start with Ruth. So I'm going to share her bio with you. So Ruth Riddick is a certified addiction recovery coach and a recovery professional, an authorized Recovery Coach Academy trainer. She has also worked extensively with experiential education modalities such as sociodrama and sociometry, which she studied under the long-term mentorship of Tian Dayton, PhD. She brings 25 years of expertise as an educator, together with long-term recovery experience, to her practice as a coach, trainer, and a mentor at Sobriety Together. She also serves as ASAP NYCB community outreach, advising peers, providers, and the public on the peer profession in New York State. She has been honored for her work by Karen Treatment Centers, where she serves on the NYC Community Awards Committee since 2011. Crossroads of Maine, where she served on the board of directors from 2010 to 2015, and Irish America Media, where she has published on recovery-related issues. Ruth Riddick founded Sobriety Together in 2004 to offer custom-designed and need-based training programs utilizing mixed media activities, artwork, meditation, small group discussion, role play, written exercises, brainstorming, plenary processing, etc., to explore a range of recovery education issues. Sobriety Together offers standard and custom programs for health and wellness professionals, addiction treatment agencies, coaches, community groups, mutual support groups, educators, and education institutes, nonprofit organizations, and other interested individuals and initiatives. I'm also joined with Paulette Walker. Paulette Walker is a consumer survivor and a graduate of the Toronto Drug Treatment Court at the Centre for Addiction and Mental Health. In 2002, Paulette, deep in the throes of her addiction, had the opportunity to change her life, and since then, she hasn't looked back. In August of 2003, she graduated from the Drug Treatment Court. She immediately became alumni of the program and started her volunteer work with the Toronto Drug Treatment Court and the Centre for Addiction and Mental Health. Paulette went back to school, and she applied for a position as a chef at the Russell Street cafeteria location, where she remained employed until July 2011. In 2005, Paulette was invited as a guest of the United Nations to share her story. How incredible. She was also a recipient of the Courage to Come Back Award. In 2008 and 2013, Paulette received the CAMH Edward Tremaine Memorial Award of Excellence. In 2008, Paulette was hired as a part-time peer support worker. While doing this meaningful work, she continued working part-time for Aramark in the Russell Street location. Paulette also decided she needed to go back to school, where she would be able to do her work more effectively. In 2012, Paulette Walker completed her community support worker program at George Brown College, and she continues to work on her educational goals. She's now working as a full-time peer support worker for the Toronto Drug Treatment Court program since 2012. And in 2018, 2019, 2020, and 2021, she's been the Bell Let's Talk ambassador. So, without further ado, I'm going to stop talking, and I will let Ruth get us started, and then Paulette will follow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary, for that very fulsome introduction.
Mhm.
I want to say first off how deeply honored I am to have been invited to join you today. For all the adventurousness, or the geographic, I should say, adventurousness of my life, I haven't yet been north of the US border. And I very much look forward in due course to visiting you all in person in Canada. But for today, let me just say how grateful I am that this technology has come into its own and that we can be together across borders, across cultures, across nations, and across geographies. It's a particular pleasure to be broadcasting to you folks from beautiful Brooklyn here in New York City. I will be speaking entirely from the perspective of the United States. So as we say in the best of places, take what you can use from what I have to say and leave the rest. But I hope you'll find something helpful as you construct the future in this conference and moving beyond this conference. So let me begin by saying a few words about what I hope to address this morning, however briefly. The proposition here is that peers add value in drug treatment courts. And I'd like to explore a little bit about outcomes and integration. But I also want to talk a little bit about the value of peers themselves and what qualifications and background peers bring to their work in drug treatment courts and other venues. I come to this work through my role as community outreach with ASAP. ASAP is the addiction services folks in the it's the Association of Substance Abuse Treatment Services professionals in New York State. And our peer workforce initiative involves a very great deal of outreach in the workforce to stakeholders, to multiple stakeholders. I'm also the program manager at our trainer registry program, where we're dedicated to elevating standards of training in the peer recovery profession. And most recently, it's been my honor to join the board of the New York Association of Treatment Court Professionals, where I am most certainly a neophyte, and you folks are training me up to be more helpful, I hope, in the treatment court environment. So with that said, my objectives this morning are to explore the value that peer recovery professionals bring to comprehensive treatment and recovery services, including within the criminal justice system, for people impacted by substance use disorder, and to discuss, again, however briefly or at an introductory level, best practices for integrating peers into service teams. So way back when, the nuns taught me that any time you're approaching any kind of project where you're trying to come to grips with any ideas or concepts, or when you're trying to lay out something, start with defining your terms. And I was in school that day. I missed all the days in school where they taught maths, but I was in school to hear that message: start by defining your terms. And this definition of recovery was brought together by Tom Hill, just very recently retired from the White House Office of National Drug Control Policy. 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago now, when Tom served in a senior capacity at the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. SAMHSA is federal level. It's just below the federal level Department of Health. So the fact that SAMHSA brought together a group of stakeholders, including people in recovery, to hammer out an operational definition of recovery. Every individual is going to have our personal definition of recovery, whatever our perspective. But the idea here was to develop an operational definition of recovery that we could all agree to as a standard. I personally really like this definition. Recovery is a process of change through which individuals improve their health and wellness, live a self-directed life, and strive to reach their full potential. And when we're talking about recovery at ASAP, that's the definition that we're talking about. So you hear me use the word recovery, it's shorthand for this paragraph. The second piece of what we're talking about today, of course, is what is a peer? And I think the development of our particular modality, peer recovery, has been so rapid in the most recent number of years that we haven't taken the time to stand back for a moment and ask ourselves once again, what do we mean when we're talking about peers? What constitutes a peer? The definition really goes back to the mid-1970s when Professor Thomasina Borkman at George Mason University in the Commonwealth of Virginia, Professor Borkman was looking at how is it that non-clinical individuals were being effective in working with other individuals in the realm of substance use disorder challenges. And Professor Borkman obviously was motivated towards this research, formal academic research, by seeing Alcoholics Anonymous in action in her community. And she was wondering, what's the driver here? What's behind this? And she locates the success of peers in two pieces: experience and expertise. That experience coming from a personal history of or exposure to substance use disorder, the process of change. We've already heard that recovery is a process of change. And the experience of living a sustainable life in recovery or observing the characteristics of a sustainable life in recovery. So it's a very rich definition here of experience. And Professor Borkman said that that's the first piece that a peer brings to her or his efficacy. But the second piece is also significant. It's an expertise requiring the application of that knowledge to the skill of helping others establish and live in their own definition and pathway of recovery across a lifetime. So it isn't only that I may bring you my experience in all its infinite richness and variety, but that I also have the skill of communicating that experience in a way that's helpful to you. And that's where we talk about, or where we see the beginnings of the value of specialized training and certification in that tiny little graphic on the bottom left-hand side, where we see experience and expertise being brought together through the development of formal knowledge, skills, and abilities. So that's our definition of recovery, our definition of peers. I've already used the phrase peer recovery professionals. So let's spend a minute defining what a professional is. Any profession is going to be comprised of 3 core characteristics: practice-specific training to assure performance in the role, profession-specific ethics to assure accountability in the practice, and role-specific credentials, certifications, licenses, whatever they may be, to assure competence. And those 3 pieces are very firmly in place in peer recovery, certainly here in New York State and beyond. And our certificates, more than 3,000 of them at this point, now have it to say that they bring a very particular value to an environment such as the criminal justice system and other environments where they serve. Certification confirms that I'm a competent and ethical professional with a transparent and accountable practice in the certified role. And every single piece of that value statement, that elevator speech, if you like, can be defined and is itself transparent. And so that when you meet up with a peer recovery professional, you're talking to somebody who has practice-specific training, profession-specific ethics and bound to a code of ethical conduct, and has a role-specific credential, a certification. So that's a very significant value statement that peers bring to you and bring to your services. So what is it that peer recovery professionals do? And again, we might define this in a very straightforward way, saying that the primary purpose of engaging peer recovery professionals is to offer peer-to-peer in that definition, that sense that Professor Borkman presents it to us, to offer peer-to-peer encouragement and practical non-clinical help to individuals building recovery capital in areas such as physical and human capital, family and social capital, community capital, and cultural capital, leveraging their experience and their expertise to do so. So that's a very specific non-clinical role that augments the other supportive services that are offered to individuals with substance use disorder challenges, wherever those services intersect, including within, obviously, the criminal justice system. The Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, federal level Department of Health, which defined recovery for us more than 10 years ago, also published in 2017 a review of the outcomes or the value of integrating peer recovery professionals, a review of outcomes. Now this, of course, infographic is much too small to read, but I bring it to you to reference the breadth of positive outcomes that have been tabulated, are rendered in metrics by SAMHSA, and some of them are of direct interest to folks in the criminal justice system. They're all outcomes that we all want to see. Very specifically, sort of many positive personal outcomes for individuals with substance use disorder, not simply personal in terms of improved motivation, improved self-worth, self-value, but also improved social connection, improved housing status, improved engagement with formal education, improved engagement with the job world and vocational training. All of these positive personal outcomes that we're all very supportive. But there are also a number of positive outcomes in terms of systems interactions. And as far back as 2017, SAMHSA identified that increased satisfaction with the overall treatment experience was an important outcome. And systems-wide, the core outcome that all of us on this room are going to be looking for is that decreased criminal justice involvement. So clearly, integrating peers, as Professor Borkman defines peers, has proven to be of very great deal of value, both in terms of personal outcomes and in terms of systems outcomes. So clearly, we're all going to want to look at peers. We're going to want to see the value of peers enhancing the treatment industry-wide commitment to recovery and helping clients build their recovery capital. We're going to want to look at the purpose of integrating peers to support the recovery mission of the host agencies and systems. We're going to look at processes for integrating peers, recognizing that they're professionals, expecting the same standards of engagement, hiring, onboarding. And we're also going to want to look in our systems and our agencies at practice itself. Peers expect the same supportive supervision, management and mentoring standards as every other member of the team. And what do those teams look like? Within the framework of the criminal justice system, this is one model that is increasingly being implemented in the United States, involving high-level communications, collaborations, cooperations between each of these stakeholders, under obviously the overall responsibility of the judge. With a coordinator, obviously prosecutors and defenders have a role in treatment courts. But over here on the right-hand side, I want to bring your attention to the involvement of other important professionals and stakeholders, from probation and enforcement through treatment providers. And we can see on this model that peer recovery professionals are explicitly identified as professionals bringing a valuable service to the overall drug treatment court team. And it's this level of integration that I think that we want to explore more deeply and develop more deeply. In this model, peer recovery professionals are invited to be involved with every piece of the participants' engagement, from meeting the eligibility requirements of a drug treatment intervention program, through screening and assessment, court intervention appearance, through treatment itself, whatever that may be, through regular drug treatment court appearances, and through completion, whether that be a favorable disposition or a return to regular docket. Peers are invited to connect in an ongoing way with participants to develop that value, to bring that value throughout the cycle of participant engagement in the model. So how we do that is by recognizing and being very explicit and mindful of our mission and purpose, of having very clear job definitions and hiring procedures, by having systems or processes that not simply welcome peers as those full members of the team, but integrate them very specifically into the team. And also, how are we going to supervise and retain peers once we've found the folks whom we want to bring on board with our drug treatment court teams? How do we supervise them? How do we manage them? How do we retain them? So these are all questions that anybody considering integrating peers and the value that they bring are going to want to get down into the weeds with. And obviously, if you're seeing anything here that you'd like to get involved in more deeply, just brainstorming, thinking it through, looking at it in practice, I'm certainly available and very willing and looking forward to having the opportunity to provide some technical assistance for you. That dual role of manager and mentor, we usually call a supervisor, that's very significant as well in ensuring that the value that peers bring is integrated into the team and into the processes and services and protocols of the team. So again, something to be mindful of and to plan for. And finally, retention is an issue. Retention is certainly an issue in the peer recovery profession. Retention is an issue generally. So again, in managing the integration of peers into drug treatment court teams, we're going to want to be mindful of retention strategies, of affirming role, value, and welcome, of suitably remunerating professionals, of having clear job scope and performance expectations, comprehensive onboarding, supportive supervision, and so on. And in the peer recovery profession generally, the question of developing a career path is also very significant, something that we all have a role in thinking about and developing. So that's what I can give you this morning is a whistle-stop introductory tour of some of the issues involved in onboarding peers, but even standing back for a moment and thinking about before we get to onboarding, before we get to integration, thinking about what is our purpose in bringing peers on board? What value do they bring? And how do we integrate peers mindfully so that we leverage their proven value? All of my remarks this morning come from these sources. So further information on the peer recovery profession available from asapnys.org, the organization I represent this morning. The model is discussed in the nycourts.gov website under drug treatment courts. And you are all more than welcome to email me for further information, further conversation, further discussion, however I can be of help to you moving forward. So without further ado, I'd like to hand my screen back to Mary and to Paulette, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing what Paulette has to say to us this morning. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ruth. You have certainly presented a compelling and irrefutable case for the inclusion of peers in drug treatment courts. So we thank you for that. And I think it's quite timely. It's a perfect segue to bring Paulette into the conversation to share her experiences as a peer worker in the Toronto Drug Treatment Court. Once Paulette has done her part, you'll have an opportunity to ask some questions of these women, and they will do their best to answer them. We can type some of the answers, and we can also respond live. So without further ado, Paulette, take it away.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. So, I'll start from, before I get into my peer work, I think I should tell you a bit about myself and my journey on becoming a peer support worker without knowing it. So I'll start back. Usually I like to say, well, once upon a time. Well, it's kind of like that. So I came to Canada when I was about 14 years old, and to my mom, and it was kind of strange. I didn't grow up with her or anything like that, but and then there were times when, like, forever and ever, I've always felt sort of like sad inside, depressed at times, but I didn't know what it was. I just thought, hey, everybody feels this like this, And so as time would go on, I end up getting married. I'm always doing things fast. I want to be over there. I'm here, but I'm just thinking, I do not want to be in this life. So I'm always searching, trying to fill that void. I got married at 17. And a little joke, on my way walking down the aisle, I said, oh my God, forgive me. I give this 2 years. You see, I had about 2 weeks prior to that, I had realized that I didn't want to get married, but I didn't have a voice. People were coming for the wedding. And this is something that I more or less bullied my mother into. You better sign this form because I'm getting married. I want out of here. And so I got married, and before I was 20, I was, looking to get a divorce. And I had a son by that time. Time would go by, I went back to school and became a makeup artist. I developed that, and I became, I was doing like photography, makeup, teaching, doing stuff for movies and so on and so forth. And around this time, I took a trip to Jamaica. I came back and I said, I'm going to go on a trip. I don't know. I just decided I'm going to go next week. That's me. So I went and I had a 2-week vacation, had a great time, came back and decided, you know what? I'm leaving Canada. I'm going back to Jamaica to live. So packed up my child, gathered up all my savings, everything, went back, had some help from my uncle, and opened up a business down there. And then I got involved with, this was in Montego Bay. So I got involved in different things. And this lady that I used to go to the gym, she decided she asked me if she could, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit nervous, if she could sponsor me to be in this Miss City of Montego Bay contest. And I'm going, like, me, like, I don't know. I've never done anything like that. I've done some modeling in Toronto before, but this was something different. So I spoke to my aunt about it, and she said, it might be really good for you, and you would be get an opportunity to promote your business as well. Because I had a boutique where I was doing manicures, pedicures, natural facials, and stuff like that. And so I entered, and I actually did the makeup on the contestants that I was sort of like competing against. And it was funny. It's Jamaican way anyway. Everybody pitched in. So for that, I was like the first runner up. And while I was on stage, this is when my life's, these moments when, your life is going one way or you're really trying, and then somehow you get veered off the side road and you just can't find your way back. So I met this gentleman, all the time we hear in our programs how, we met a guy, or the guy would say, yeah, and I met a girl. And so for me, yeah, I met this wonderful guy, I thought. And so he introduced me to crack cocaine. And oh my God, like, I'd never done drugs before. I didn't know what it was. I was already intoxicated. I was drinking that night. And I tried. And I don't know, we just I was stuck. I finally found something to fill that hole that I was just trying to fill all this time. Prior to that, I will mention that over the years, I had secretly tried to commit suicide so many times. I didn't tell anyone. I had a lot of secrets, Anyway, I was in Jamaica, and so I got involved with him, and that's all we did. And after about 6 months, I realized that I wasn't paying attention to my business. I said, oh my God, what am I becoming? I said, I got to get away. So I had my best friend there, and she knew what was happening. Actually, she was there the night when, I first started, and she didn't. I don't know. She didn't. She said, no, thank you. So she was actually a witness to my addiction and how my life was spiraling out of control. So we secretly packed up my stuff. She bought all my stock and everything. And I just showed up at my mother's house one night. I said, like, I'm back, baby in hand, I'm back. And I never told anyone. No one knew. Why all of a sudden, Paulette is in Jamaica. She's doing well. She has her business. I'm going back and forth all the time. I seem to be living a really prosperous life, but secretly I'm falling apart inside. So when I came back to Toronto, like I said, I didn't say anything to anyone. I started looking for another job again. And I remember it was close to summertime, and I decided to take that summer and just kind of find some balance in my life. And while I was at my mom's house, I got a phone call. It was him. He's back. He's in Toronto. There I go. He found me, started up again. Until after that time, I actually broke free from him and didn't see him for a number of years. And that gave me some time to, kind of sweep my little secret life, my addiction, and just kind of moved on. And then I started working, got a really great job here in Toronto, in New Yorkville. And again, I moved on and I opened up a little salon within a salon. And then I started meeting different people, and I end up with this great opportunity to do the cover work for Chatelaine magazine here in Toronto. And that year I also did the makeup for the Genie Awards. This is a big thing. So I went and I did, it was a lovely event, a red carpet event. I found myself that night, from film and TV, red carpet to a crack house. I was there for 2 weeks. It's what they call a trap house. I couldn't move. I didn't know how to get out. I was just so consumed. I had a child. I'd abandoned my child. And this part of my story has taken me a long time to actually say, yeah, I did. Such a lot of pain that comes and shame that came with that. And after around 2 weeks, I don't know, I ended up calling my ex-husband, and everybody was wondering what happened to me. They thought I was dead. I just disappeared. But I think maybe my roommate might have given given my family or somebody some idea what was going on with me. Anyway, I didn't know how to go back to my life. Obviously, I'd lost my job. I couldn't face anyone. Honestly, I could not face anyone. I didn't know what to do. I was in so deep in that hole that I didn't know how to crawl out of it. So I stayed in the hole. I stayed in that hole for the next 20 years. So my addiction actually was for about 25 years. You know, that thing takes a little time to grow on you until it just pulls you right under. And for the next 20 years, I lived a life like unbelievable life I lived. It was disgusting. It was dirty. You know, from all that darkness, I had 5 beautiful children. So sometimes in the darkness, there's light and there's good. I know I couldn't take care of them, but I could not, you know, I couldn't do any other. For me, I had no choice but to give birth to my kids. And I knew in my heart, that's all I could do. I knew that I couldn't take care of them. But somehow I had some sort of faith in me. I don't know what anyone else want to call it, but I always had hope. So at some point, even a little bit of hope. I always said, I think one day something's going to happen and I'm going to be taken out of this hole and my life is going to change, because I cannot believe I'm here. You know, the unspeakable life I was living, the darkness, the abuse, sleeping in stairwells, being homeless, doing dates, having babies that, being pregnant on the street. It was pure hell, you know. If people talk about heaven and hell, I already went to hell. I was living in it, you know, and praise God, I've survived it. So we'll fast forward, and 2 years before during those 20 years, I quit a lot of times. I'm the queen of quitting. I would quit for this reason or that reason. I'd quit because of this guy or that guy. I'd quit whenever I found out that I was pregnant. I would quit after the first 2 months, because by that time I'd know that I'm pregnant, and I'd most of the time I'd go home and, you know, and just kind of rock it out, because I wasn't doing any treatment. I'd never been to a detox. I didn't even know what that was. CA meetings and stuff, I had no idea. I'd never been to a shelter, any of those resources that I had no clue even existed. I'd given birth to my last child, and that one, for some reason, it really took a toll on my mental health. And I started hearing voices, you know. I started losing hope by that time. And there were times when I would be like walking the streets like 3, 4 o'clock in the mornings, just really lost. And I would pray and ask God to just take this hunger out of me. You know, just let me wake up tomorrow and I don't remember this life at all. And that was a constant wish of mine the last 2 years, until the 11th of September, November came around, 2002. It's Veterans Day. And I'm 25 years in. I'm an old veteran at this too. Living on the street, coping, you know, I just felt like a war veteran myself, just beaten up and lost, and I just need to go home, wherever home was, you know. The night before, I'd gone out and some kind of weird run with this gentleman, and he took me to some weird place that I thought, oh my God, it was something out of some scary movie. And I had to get my wits about me to escape that. And I did. The next morning, it was a Sunday, never forget that. I woke up that morning just feeling like actually, when I left, I went to the crack house that I know. And that was my haven. That was my safe place. Can you imagine that? And this was a place where you dare not fall asleep, because no matter where you hid your money or your goods, they're going to find it, and you're fast asleep, because most of the time we're all so exhausted that we don't go to sleep, we pass out. And then when you pass out, you're like the dead, anything can happen to you, during those times. So it's really, really dangerous. And that was my haven. So there you go. That evening, like I said, I was feeling like this sixth sense, like my stomach was hurting, and I said like something was going to happen today. Around 7 o'clock that evening, for me, the sun going down in the evenings is a huge trigger for me. And so the sun started going down. I said, okay, I got to get out of here. So I went to the neighborhood bar. And this gentleman approached me and, asked me to go pick up something for him. And, being the person I was then, I go, yes, my evening has started. So I did that, and I got busted that night. First time, here was all this years thinking, nobody knows I'm on drugs. I've never been busted. I've never been to jail. Got picked up for some shoplifting, but always got released, like years before that, well, 14, 15 years prior to that. And then I realized I can't shoplift, because every time I put my hand on something that didn't belong to me, I got caught. And so it was scary. Like the SWAT team, you'd think that I was a murderer or something like that, some kingpin drug dealer. I don't know why they do that. But anyway, saved my life. I remember they put me in the back of the cruiser, and I put my head back and I go, oh my God, it's over now. And in that moment, I had no idea what I meant when I said it was over. But my journey was over, and my new life was beginning. But I didn't know that. So I went to jail, and I was there for about 3 weeks, detoxing, sleeping on, and that whole experience was a whole nother level of, oh my God, what is this? Where am I? I'm looking around. This place is so hard. The seats, your bed, everything hurts. There's nothing to sleep on but concrete and a thin mattress, But even then, it was better than sleeping on the street. Can you imagine? You find that at least now I can just rest. And so, like I said, that's where I detoxed. And then this young lady, she approached me one day and she goes, don't you have anyone to call? And in that moment, I just like, oh my God. I just felt so alone, and like this little poor thing girl that you don't have anyone to call. But then I said, I'm not going to call anyone. I could have called my mom or my sisters, but I had made so many promises to them. Every time I'd go home and I would quit, and I'm going to do this, and this is my last time, and da-da-da-da, and all these big plans, and 20 years of that, I just couldn't do it again. I said, I'm not making any promises to anybody. I'm not going to go home. I've tried that so many times. It doesn't work. I don't know. Forget it. So she said to me, oh, by the way, there's a program that's called drug diversion and you'll get bail. And I go, what? So I get all perky now, right? I'm happy. There's an opportunity here I can get out. But I didn't know it was a treatment program. I just thought they were going to give you a bail or something, and I just go about my business. Well, there I was. I got transported to Old City Hall here in Toronto and did that walk of shame, with the cuffs and that lovely green jumpsuit they give you, and you're all crappy looking and just like. And I got let into courtroom 116, and that's where I met Justice Barnes. He was a Crown then, and Justice Paul Bentley was the judge that day. He's a co-founder for the drug treatment court here in Toronto. And I just remember he just told the guard to take the handcuffs off of me. And I go through this because it's really those moments of connection that really made a difference for me. How gentle he was. And, so he brought me around to the mic and he asked me my name. I told him. He said, and my age, and I was around 43, 44 then. I looked like I was 80, but that was my age at the time. And asked me how many kids, if I had children. I said, yeah. He said, how many? How long you been using drugs? I said, over 20 years. I said, do you want to stop using drugs? I kind of took a moment and go, do I? I'm an addict, right? Do I? And in that moment, I said, yeah, I do. But I don't know how to stop. He says, not to worry. We're here to help you. So right then and there, it was like, okay, I got some people to help me along the way here. He says, only ask one thing of you, that you're honest. That's a big ask. Yeah, I've been an addict for over 25 years and probably longer than that, because I remember drinking wine and stuff when I was like 14 years old. This addiction was building basically from I was a teenager. I didn't know that. He said, you have to be honest with the court. If you use drugs, I got to tell them that you use drugs. And I'm going like, these people are crazy. I'm not coming to court to tell you that I use drugs. This is some kind of trick, I wasn't trusting anyone. So before I got caught in a little trick, I'm not coming here to tell you that I'm using. I'm not going to use. But little by little, like I remember, just another thing that happened for me too was I didn't have a home. I didn't have an address. So they put me in a shelter. And these are some of the things that how I do my work as well, is that when they gave me the tokens and gave me the address to go to that shelter, you just happen to be a community member, a chaplain there. And he offered me a ride he and his wife, and he offered me a ride to the, sorry, my phone is ringing. Sorry about that. Okay. Yeah. And who offered me a ride to the shelter? Because if that was left up to me to find my way there, I wouldn't have gone. I wouldn't have made it. I would have taken another wrong turn, Anyway, the very next day I went to the shelter. I stayed there the night, and that was a new experience for me. And it was an eye opener, because there I saw that, where my life was really going. I was homeless. I had bags. I was a bag lady, only that I didn't know it. I had no idea how close I was to just losing my sanity, because I was already losing that. And my journey just started with the day I remember going to coming to CAMH for an assessment, and I've never left. I've never left. I haven't left drug court. I haven't left CAMH in any way. I found my people. I found that sense of that connection, that sense of community and belonging. You know, I didn't know that, you know, a lot of times that one of the reasons that I had no success was that I didn't have any treatment. I had no coping skills. I grew up without any sort of like skills. It was either they're too strict and the strictness is kind of creepy, or I was just let loose to run on my own. So I do whatever I want. That's what happened when I came to Canada. I had no guidance, you know. I started working at 14 years old instead of going to school, you know, and so I felt like I was a woman. I'm making my own money, I can do what I want. And all these little things, you know, really affected my life and my self-esteem. And, you know, any schooling that I've gone to is because, you know, eventually is something that I want. And so about a year later, I graduated, you know, during my journey in course of my treatment in drug court, I learned so much about myself. I didn't, you know, I didn't know anything about people, places, and things, you know. And then I started so much of the teachings. I reflected on all the times that I quit and all the things that I wasn't doing. So I had to learn to stop listening to myself. Get out of my way. I had to get out of my own way in order to make it through. And, you know, I learned about, I ended up with a therapist. Her name is Serena Coy. Gotta give it to her. She's a little white lady, young girl. I'm thinking, oh my God, what does she know about me? How can she tell me about me? Well, I'll tell you, don't judge people. You know, she took me through the steps. She walked with me along beside me, you know, going through my whole journey from as far back as I couldn't remember, or peeling back the onions, you know, and putting things to rest so I could just kind of grow up. Because I remember she asked me, what is it she wanted? What do you want from this? I said, I want to feel like a grown up. Because deep inside, I felt like a little girl lost. I wanted to learn how, you know, to take care of myself in a healthy way. And because, you know, here I'm in my 40s and I actually feel like some part of me is still like 16. Some parts of me is just like I'm still 5. And yeah, so I learned a lot, and I learned to love this life in recovery. So one day after that, I graduated from drug court. I lived in a recovery home for about 8 months while I did my outpatient work. And then I went back to school because I realized that, you know, I enjoy cooking. And she encouraged me to go back to school and did a course. So one day I'm leaving my new job now, and here I am, I'm working, you know, and feeling strong and independent. And one day I'm leaving work, and it was the springtime. And this must have been in 2004 or 2003, I forgot. Yeah, it was a year after. And I just had this feeling of just feeling cleansed. I can't remember the last time that I actually felt like all that stuff I had been carrying, all this baggage and crap I had been carrying with me all these years, I just felt it lifted off my shoulder. And as a woman, you know, we're so judged, and we judge ourselves even harsher about, mistakes we make in our lives, that I decided I'm not carrying that stigma with me. I'm not, nobody's gonna look at me and call me an addict or a crackhead. How dare you? Right? So I love the word, Ruth, recovery. So I chose that word, recovery. Right? As I figure everybody's recovering from something, right? So, recovering from what is really nobody's business unless I say so, right? And so, I realize that this recovery life it's ongoing. It's going to be a part of who I am. And it's something that I've learned to embrace and to be proud of, because really, if it wasn't for that part of my life that was so dark, I wouldn't appreciate all the goodness that I have in my life right now. And, I wouldn't even know what it feels like to go through, to actually feel grief and go through a breakup where my heart was broken and I can actually feel it. And in some ways, maybe it is a sadistic part of me, it actually felt good to be able to have those feelings and to kind of go through it, to walk through it, I learned, what don't kill you make you stronger. And if it wasn't for my years out there, I wouldn't have this great career that I have today. So when you talk about how, people, how do I get that experience? I graduated with honors. I graduated from the School of Hard Knocks, and I'm grateful. I am. And so that's why I want to share, and becoming a peer worker, actually, it just kind of, it's not something that I chose to do. It's something that was offered to me. First of all, I remember Justice Bentley always saying, we have to find a place for you somewhere. And just kind of put that hope in my mind, that because I enjoyed cooking, but it's not something I wanted to do for the rest of my life. It's that kind of work takes a different toll on your body. And it was great for the first 5 years, but afterwards it's just like became monotonous to me. But thank God that I always stayed connected to drug court, to all the activities, becoming an alumni, just showing up for court. I used to go to court when I didn't have to go to court. I just go to court and sit in the back of the courtroom because that's my AA group. That's my CA group, and I just sit back there because it reminds me of where I do not ever want to be. And so in saying that, what do I do for the clients? So when I got hired, I got hired for 1 day a week. And my manager, Shannon, at the time, she said to me, as I asked her, I said, so what is this peer work? She says, well, just put yourself in the client's position, right? Just remember when you were a client and what it felt like, and work from there, And of course, I went and I had some training. I did training with intentional peer support work, alternative to responses to crisis. I've done a lot of training. I went back to school to become a community support worker. So in doing my work, I walk alongside the clients that I work with, and I help them with doctor's appointments, accessing bank accounts, to do peer work. I clean up after them. I wipe noses. I rub backs. I go to the Woman's Own Day program because I love cooking. I'm always preparing food and providing meals. I do a lot of hustling, like fundraising, gathering. My office is like, I don't know if you can see the amount of stuff I'm sitting around, because of pots and pans and glasses and comforters and bed sheets and underwears and socks and cans of biscuits and tuna. Like, anything you want. Paulette, do you have such and such? I can open a drawer and I put my toothpaste, toothbrush, rags, towels. You name it, I have it, right? And always gathering. Like, you know, it's been such an honor, to be honest with you. It's a purpose. This work has given me a sense of purpose, and I guess I'll leave it there. You know, I see time is up. I hope I've really answered some of the questions around peer work by telling you a bit about my own personal journey and what it takes to become a peer worker. Everybody, you know, usually ask, you know, I want to be, or say something like, I want to be a peer worker. But it's not something for everyone, to be honest with you. I think it takes time. I think you know, thank God, you know, it was a good 7 years before I started working with clients. So I had a good ground, you know, a good foundation around my recovery. My recovery is continuous. I still see a therapist, many therapists. I have a great supervisor, Robin Cuff. I mean, I can go to her and talk to her about anything. No judgment. The team I work with, they make me feel like I belong, you know, that I'm a really good part of the team. I'm sorry for some peer workers who don't have that kind of support. And I just want to say thank you so much. And that's it for me, signing off.
Wow. Thank you, Paulette. I encourage you to look at some of the comments in the chat and even in the Q&A.
Thank you.
We deeply, deeply appreciate your willingness to come here today to share your story. And we absolutely do not underestimate the courage that it takes to speak so openly, so raw, with such candor about your experiences. I've had the opportunity to hear you speak on several occasions, and each time I hear you speak, I'm always reminded of a Brené Brown quote that goes a little something like this. One day you will tell your story of how you overcame what you went through, and it will be someone else's survival guide. You absolutely embody that quote. You've dedicated your life to serving. You're selfless and you are inspirational. You share your deepest secrets from your darkest hours, all for the betterment of others. So we are truly, truly grateful, Paulette, for your words today. Thank you. If anybody has any questions now for Ruth or for Paulette, please do send them into the Q&A. Otherwise, I'm not seeing any. Oh, perhaps there is a question. So the question is this. So Paulette, thank you for sharing your amazing journey. Truly an inspiration. Arlene says, I'm a manager of an anti-human trafficking program. We have peer navigators in our team with lived experience. There's no training in terms of how to support peers. We do treat peers as part of our staff teams, and we are aware that they're still in recovery. What do we need to do to ensure that we take into consideration in terms of supporting peers in their day-to-day role? Paulette, I don't know if we've lost you. I don't see her anymore.
If I may, Mary, I'd like to speak to that question directly.
Please.
But before doing so, I'd like to thank you, Mary, for inviting Paulette to be with us this morning, because the inspiration that she's provided for everyone here today. This is why we do what we do. Is because this courage, this inspiration, and this energy is so powerful, and it powers and empowers others. So, so you've given us a very, I don't see Paulette here. I prefer to be speaking to her directly, but Paulette has given us, an understanding, a gut level understanding of what it is that peers bring to the table, bring to their engagements. And if I may just revert briefly to Professor Borkman, talking about how that experience is so valuable and so important. And so is the expertise. Paulette talks about walking with folks. And she talks about how she went back to school to learn how to do this work more skillfully. There is training for peers, and there are standards of competence for peers and training to help deliver that competence. And there are certifications for peers that confirm that training and that competence and the commitment to the ethical standards that Paulette has enumerated for us. She talks about the scene being set for her by the judge who asked her to be honest. That's an ethical consideration and an ethical responsibility of every professional. So all of which is simply to say, Mary, that I think in bringing Paulette and her galvanizing story to us this morning, you couldn't have better illustrated exactly what it is that nerds like moi mem mean when we talk about value, when we talk about bringing people on board, when we talk about integration, when we talk about putting supports in place for the people we bring on board. Everything from training through supervision, through feedback loops, through caring about our people. So I hope that, that folks who've been with us today, have an opportunity to go away from listening to Paulette and digesting what it is that's so special about bringing this level of experience and expertise into the team.
Thank you, Ruth. I won't even try to pick up where you've left off. You've said it so very, very well. Thank you for that. Thank you to Paulette. This has been a truly inspirational session, and that is definitely the sentiments that are echoed in the chat and in the Q&A. Paulette, if you get a chance to read.
I will. Thank you. Sorry, somehow all of a sudden everything just went black. Yeah.
Happy to have you back. We are going to Paulette, do you have anything else you want to add before I sign up?
I just want to say just thank you so much, and thanks to Drug Treatment Court. Thank you, Justice Barnes. Just thank you all, for having these programs and having people like yourself that give people like me a second chance at life, so say 2 thumbs up. Thank you.
Okay, we are going to take a brief break.